Alright, so we are at our table of contents now. We have 6 units so far. We're going to be adding unit number 7 today. And unit number 7 is SOL 6.8, and it is coordinate graphing. So take a second to get that copied into your table of contents. Alright, once you have that copied, you're going to flip to the next page of your notes, and we're going to make sure that we start on the right side. For me, I'm already on the right side. I finished off ordering FDP on the left side of my notes, but every time we start a new unit, we want to start on the right side. So we're going to start by putting our number 7 up in the corner and writing our SOL number and topic, SOL 6.8. Coordinate graphing. So with this unit, I have tried to not have you have to write as much vocabulary and definitions and handwrite things, because a lot of this unit is actually visual. So I've provided a notes page that you're going to glue in below our heading, and we'll be kind of filling in some spots on this page. A lot of it today, but some of it in other points, other days throughout our unit. So take your glue stick and get that glued in. All right. All right, so we're going to start with what looks like this grid paper right here. That is your coordinate plane. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to count down from the top and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And draw a line across like that. And you're going to draw arrows on either end of that line. And I want you to find the middle of this line. This line is going to be our number line, and we want to put 0 in the middle. So if we start on the edge, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here, that's the middle. So we're going to label that with a 0. I'm going to write the 0 on top of the number line instead of below it. You'll see why in a minute. Then to the right of 0, I would have 1, I would have 2, 3, 4, and then all the way at the end would be 5. It's a little crowded to try and write the 5 by the arrow, so I'm just going to go through 4. To the left of 0, just like the number line in our classroom, to the left of 0 would be -1, followed by -2, -3, -4, and then again -5 would be on that end. So right now all we've done is we've drawn a number line on this grid paper. The only thing a little different is the 0 I put on it instead of below it. Now this number line, that's a flat number line, is called the x-axis. So you can write x-axis kind of above it there off to the side. And down below here in this middle section talks about the x-axis. The x-axis is the flat number line. So I'm going to put flat over here in the shorter blank, but the big like vocab word we want to use, if something is flat, it is horizontal, meaning it is kind of like the horizon flat. If you look over the ocean and watch the sunset over the horizon, it would look flat, like the x-axis. Now, when we are dealing with the coordinate plane, we are actually looking at a combination of two different number lines. So we have our flat or horizontal number line that is the x-axis. We also have another number line. And this number line is going to be a vertical number line, just like a thermometer. So I'm going to draw a number line that's going to go right through that 0 that we drew. And I draw my arrows on either side to show that actually that number line would go past what I'm numbering it on this paper. It would go on infinitely in both directions. Now above 0, for example, on a thermometer, would be +1, +2, +3, +4. Now these lines I'm drawing, those are not negative signs. It's just drawing kind of the mark on that grid line indicating the marks on the number line. So when I go below 0, I would then have a -1, a -2, and I only have enough room for a -3 in this direction, but that's okay. So this number line that's going up and down is your y-axis. So easy way to think of it is, again, up and down axis. But I mentioned it earlier before I drew it, the big vocab word for this is vertical. So I will also label this axis up by the top of it. So that is your y-axis up at the top. So it is important to note that the y-axis is this entire number line going up and down. It is not just the very top of it, it's that entire number line. And the x-axis is this entire number line. That entire line, both sides of it, the left side and the right side, the positives and the negatives. All right, now as we have drawn both of these number lines kind of intersecting, if you will, right here at 0, it is divided up our coordinate plane into 4 sections. So these sections do have names. So I skipped over this first part underneath my grid here. It says the quadrants are labeled in a blank direction. So that vocab word that talks about these different sections, those are your quadrants. And the prefix you see in quadrant is quad. Quad means 4. Okay, so quadrants are the 4 sections of this coordinate plane. Now, they do have numbers, they are numbered, and it starts with the top right here. Most things, if you've done anything with graphing so far, it's probably been in science class. You might have seen some line graphs or bar graphs as well in math in prior years. And you're mostly in the past have just dealt with this top right corner, okay? Drawing a bar graph or a line graph, dealing with these numbers, positive numbers, okay? That section or that quadrant is quadrant number 1. But we write it with a Roman numeral 1. So it looks like a capital I. Now, I do go in and I'm going to fill in this blank here, counterclockwise direction. So counterclockwise is a big word. But what it means is I go against the direction that the hands go on a clock, okay? So that is essentially making a C shape, and I will kind of draw the arrow. Almost looks like a capital G the way that I wrote it, but it's a C shape, and the arrow is kind of showing the direction, okay? So I'm going to number these quadrants, or these 4 sections, starting with number 1, and you can always remember that number 1, that's about the same place that 1 is on a clock. So that's kind of your starting point. You go around here in a C shape. So after 1 would come 2, and so I'm going to write this with a Roman numeral as well, so it looks like 2 capital I's. Then quadrant 3 is going to look like 3 capital I's. Quadrant 4 is a little bit different. Quadrant 4, instead of like 4 capital I's, it's actually an I and a V. So if you're writing in Roman numerals, that V would be a number 5, and the reason a 4 has a 1 in front of it is when you're dealing with Roman numerals, 5 is kind of like your base number, and the 1 in front of it means you take 1 away. So if I wanted to write a 6, the 1 would be after the 5. So if you have a number in front, it's subtracting it. If you have a number after it, it's adding it. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are your numbers of your quadrants. So we're going to start today with, we have plotting and identifying points. Today we're going to start with identifying points. So what that means is if I were to have a point out here somewhere on this grid, I would have to basically explain directions on how to get to that point. So I'm going to put a point over here. Okay? Now, you might want to wait until we explain how to get there for you to do it on your paper to make sure it's in the same spot as mine. But we're going to identify how to get to that point. Okay, notice my points that I'm dealing with, at least in 6th grade, are always going to be where the lines intersect. It's not going to be in between a couple lines. It's going to be where the lines intersect. Now, when we identify where a point is, or when it comes time to plotting a point, we look at how far along, where along my x-axis or my horizontal number line that point falls, and where it falls along my vertical number line, my y-axis. So you are always going to start at the middle point. That middle point is called your origin. And it's called your origin because when you are trying to give directions to a point or to plot a point yourself, that's your starting point. So origin means beginning. It's where you begin. So I'm going to start right here in the middle at the origin. I always have to list my x coordinate first, meaning how far left or right I go along this flat, this x-axis. So if I start at the middle here, and I want to kind of get lined up with where this point is, I would have to go to decide if I go to the left or to the right. If I go to the left, I'm dealing with negative numbers. If I go to the right, I'm dealing with positive numbers. So I'm starting right here in the middle at the origin. And I'm going 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right. So that means my x coordinate would be a positive 3. Now, this is where I've left off. I'm on the 3 on the x-axis. Now, my point is not on that x-axis. It is actually above it. So I have another number I have to list to let me know how far above or below that axis I have to go. My numbers above the axis are positive, and my numbers below the axis are negative. So here I am. I've left off at the 3 on this line, on the x-axis. I'm having to go up, and I'm going up 1, 2 spaces. So my y-coordinate, or how far up on my y-axis that point is, or lines up with, is a positive 2. So my x-coordinate tells me how far left or right, and my y-coordinate tells me how far up or down I go. Now, the exact location of a point on the coordinate plane is called the ordered pair. So there's more vocabulary. Coordinates or ordered pair is the same thing. Now, we will figure out some of kind of these rules later, and distance and plotting points later. So if you're going to plot this point on your own, I said you might want to wait until after I've put it on my, until we kind of discussed how to get there. You would start at the origin at the center. You would go to the right 1, 2, 3 spaces, so it lines up with the 3 on the x-axis, and then go up 2 spaces, so it lines up with the positive 2 along that y-axis. And I would say that that coordinate is 0.32, or it is at 3, 2, and that's how I would describe how to get to that point. I'm giving directions. So this whole theme is where's Waldo? If this is where Waldo is, how do I find him? Where is Waldo? He's at 3,